So this is fine, us just kind of dragging and dropping these asteroids in here, but let's set up a system that'll spawn these asteroids in programmatically. So I'm going to select all these and delete them. We don't need them here anymore. Instead, I'm going to create a new empty object here, and we're just going to call this game, and we'll add a new FSM on here that we'll call asteroid spawner. Okay, hit edit, and what we want to do, get a random point on the screen and then create it there. So the first thing that we're going to do is put a random float, and it's going to be between 0 and 1. We're going to say our random x, y, okay, because we're going to be using this for both x and y. And then we're going to be doing a screen to world point, okay, and we're going to be using that for, screen x and screen y. Okay, we're going to have this as normalized, right? Because like I said before, normalized is when you take positions between the screen and say that it's 0 or 1. So just to be extra clear about that, what we have here is something that is like this, right? So this is 1 and 1. Oops. So this is 1 and 1. So right here, this would be 1 comma 1, right? This little corner up here. Up here is 0 comma 1, right? Because x, right, is like this, and then y is like this. So this is x and this is y, right? Over here, this is x and this is y. And over here, this would be 1 comma 0 because this is x and this is y. Okay, no matter what the screen resolution is, whether it's 1080 or 4K or whatever, it'll always be normalized into being either 0 when it's at one end of that spectrum and 1 when it's at the other end. And then we're going to store this world vector, right? The number that it spits out when it says, okay, well, what's the vector2 version of this in the world? Well, that'll be stored in a new variable that we'll call our world position, okay? And then what we could do is put in a create object, and we're going to be saying that we'll get from our assets our large asteroid, okay? And then we'll do a loop state. We'll do a loop state action at the very bottom here. So it loops through this entire state, all this logic that we just put. It does it however many times we put in here. So you could just hard code it in here, but I want to make this into a variable that we can call number of asteroids. Okay, and that way we can expose it here in the editor, and anytime we're working our game, we can sort of, when you're doing whatever, call it balancing or anything like that, it makes it easier for you to come over here and just change this number instead of having to dig around inside your FSM, navigating to the variables tab and changing it here. So now you could just see it here and change it, and we'll say that we'll start with 10. Now, this create object, it's going to be using the position that we created, world position. Okay, so you get this random value between 0 and 1. We use that to say that's for our x and y, so it gets a random position between x and y for between 0 and 1 for both x and y. It gives us the world version of that, right, which is to say what are the coordinates actually in our game, not just the pixels on our screen or whatever the relative normalized version of that. And then it creates an asteroid at that random position, right? And then it loops through all that logic this number of times until it's done. And when it's finished, we can send custom event next, and we'll just add that transition right here so it goes like this, okay? And so now it's complete, and here we'll say spawn asteroids. All right, and now when we play this, we should get 10 asteroids randomly spawned around the screen. Okay, now here's something that's interesting to note, is that these all spawned in a line because they're using the same value, and every time I do this, you're going to see the same thing. They're using the same value for both the x and the y coordinate. So to give this a little bit more variation, we want to use 2 different values for our x and y. So I can actually right-click and say edit variable. We'll say that this is our x, and we're just going to copy and paste this so we have one for y as well. New variable y, and screen x will use x, but screen y will use y. Now when we save this, we play it, we should get a little bit more variation in our spawn points. Okay, there we go. That looks good. And now we can fly around and shoot these, right?